On behalf of the Cedar Falls Community Schools Foundation, I'd like to welcome you here this afternoon for our 8th annual Sturgis Falls, Cedar Falls High School Class Reunion and Alumni Association Connection. And what we've been doing for the foundation on this project for the past 7 years, now 8 years, and hopefully for years to come, is to have you back and to welcome you back, talk a little bit about what the foundation does, and also for you to get a chance to tour the high school where most of you attended, or your spouse is with you, or your children. We're just glad to have you. And the reason we're doing this is the Cedar Falls Community Schools Foundation has a mission, a very simple mission, that is generating resources for the Cedar Falls Community School District. So in other words, we're raising funds to help out the students and the staff and any program that might have extra needs in the district. And you are the important people in today's activity because most of you, as I said earlier, either graduated or knew someone or at least attended the school some years ago. How many of you are here from the class of 1955? Have a couple. 1965? More? 75 the most. Usually we find that the 40th anniversary class has the most attendees, and that's no exception today. We also have many of you who have just graduated in the year 2005, so you're having your 10th year reunion. And as I told you about 3 or 4 years ago on your 5th reunion, that time will fly even faster as you continue on with these reunions. I attended my own class reunion a year ago at high school class reunion of the 60th anniversary. So that puts me well up into the years advance of you. But the reason we're talking today is that we want you to tour the building. We're going to have students over here who know the building well, and things have changed since many of you have been here. Some of you, when you put your hands up for the class of 1955, really you were the second graduating class of this current building, Cedar Falls High School. For those of you who don't know, this building was constructed. Construction began in 1950 for the main core of the building. And if these students will tell you that they really learn in parts of that building that were constructed 65 years ago when it commenced. And there are some needs that are present in the building, as you'll find out. As the building, of course, continued, the enrollment grew and the building construction continued to grow, and there were several periods of time that additions were made to the building. But I must start with one thing and a reminder that if you were here in 1955 or 65 or 75, you know that the building has really been limited in its scope as far as acreage is concerned. In 1950, when the bond issue was passed, only enough money was available to construct the building on 13 acres of land. At that time, it was recommended for a school of that size to have 40 or 45 acres of land. It didn't happen because the school district was at its capacity for issuing bonds. And so where it could have been possible, if there was money available, to maybe go all the way to Hudson Road from 8th Street to 12th Street with all those homes that are there and have an adequate size buildings and grounds, it was limited to 13 acres, and that's been really constrictive throughout the years, and many of you attended during those times at this building. And the building itself, the very first class came in 1953, started and graduated in 1954, had 100 students in each class. Cedar Falls itself is a community of about 6,000 people. To give you a little bit further perspective, Iowa State Teachers College, the predecessor of the State College of Iowa and the University of Northern Iowa, in 1950 had 2,200 students, a little bit different than the 12,000 that attend today, or the city of Cedar Falls, which has about 40,000 people in it compared to that 6,000 some back in 1950. But there was growth on the horizon in 1950. Post-World War II, service people returned home, families continued to grow, and the great needs occurred at the elementary school level, at the elementary and then junior high schools. How many of you attended Lincoln Elementary School? Many of you. How about Cedar Heights Elementary School? Those no longer exist where you attended, And you went on to Pete or Holmes Junior High Schools, and Pete Junior High School was constructed in 1959, Holmes Junior High School in 1965. Both have just completed extensive renovations and remodeling. And if you would get a chance to go back to those buildings, they are completely different from when you attended those buildings. Back to Cedar Falls High School. The enrollment continued to grow at the elementary level in the early 1960s, 1950s actually, late 50s and early 60s. And then that group really grew from the 100 in a class to 200, 300, 400, and 500 plus until the period of the 1970s when that large group moved through the high schools, each graduating class at Cedar Falls High School in the mid-70s, 500 people. Those of you who graduated in 1975, you were 1 year before the largest graduating class ever of Cedar Falls High School in 1976 of 533 students. The reason I know those figures, I was principal at the time, and so we dealt with a lot of really tight spaces. Building additions occurred in 1968, 1973, and then on more recently, the auditorium, musical arts facility, gymnasium renovations, English renovations occurred as a result of 1 cent option tax. But the core of the building remains the same, pretty much so. Science labs really are in need of a lot of repair and a lot of discussion that we'll talk a little bit later about, and you might have questions on the future of the building program in Cedar Falls Community Schools. Now, when you tour the buildings, you will note that as we increased the size of the buildings, the district did, it took up more of the acreage of land. So if there were 13 acres of land originally, the building takes up the vast majority of the land. If a building would, again, be constructed to serve the capacity that's expected in this district of maybe 1,200, 1,300, 1,400 eventually, again, the requirements would be of 47 acres, 45 to 47 acres of land to really build a new facility. But what you want to do is learn more about what's going on in the district, what has been happening since you were a student here. The foundation has been proactive in many ways of, as I said, generating resources for teacher professional growth. Most recently is the professional learning communities that we've helped support. We've established student scholarships. We have also, and they're handed out at the honors convocation, and also do such things as senior breakfast for the senior class, where we induct all of the graduating seniors into our alumni association, free of charge, including the breakfast at that time. So our connections really are to sport and doing the things that we're doing today to inviting alums back to the school. We have hundreds that show up each year, and you're one of about 20 groups that will be taking tours throughout the building in groups of 25. You might ask, how are things going since we were students here at Cedar Falls High School? And as an observer who is still interested in the school program after retiring some 16 years ago as Director of Secondary Education, they're going very well. Students are achieving academically, and I might tell you that the ACT scores on a composite average for the last couple of years are right around the 24.0 composite level. That's a full probably 2.5 points above the state average of Iowa. And Iowa is always ranked second or third, or whatever the case might be, of the 28 states who give the ACT as the primary college entry level test. 4 years ago, 2 students scored a perfect 36 on the ACT. And as I met with those students and congratulated them, I told them that they broke my record of 35. And 18 my junior year and 17 my senior year. And I got up to that 35 level. Seriously, ACTs weren't invented by the time I was going to high school. But that's an indication. And I called ACT Testing Services when that happened, and I said, how frequent is this? They said, very rare does this happen, that there are 2 perfect scores in one graduating class. Now, the 2, there have been singular efforts and a perfect ACT score, but that's really significant to have those 2. So academic attainment has really been first and foremost to carry out the tradition of excellence in the Cedar Falls Community Schools. Class sizes and averages and ratios have been excellent. The Board of Education has tried to maintain those and continue the special programs that have been instituted in the district over the last several years. So academically, all the things that are going on right now with STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, Project Lead the Way, all those things along with meeting the needs of different levels of academic achievement of the students has really been outstanding. The next area, of course, would be extracurricular activities. And those activities, students have been involved at a 75% plus level in the most recent years. And so it's not uncommon to see huge numbers of students involved in musical activities and achieving very well of speech and drama, of journalism activities, of athletic activities, and of course achieving at a very high level in each of those areas. Our all-state numbers in music are very high each year in the orchestra, band, instrumental, and vocal areas. So lots of involvement in the students and a very huge amount of pride in the academic achievements and the extracurricular affairs as well. So that's how things are going, and this is in light of a lot of the challenges that are facing public education facilities and organizations in these years. There's been a lot of national news about it, and you come from Texas, you come from California, from the East Coast, and what I usually find out is that when I've had you as a student and you're bringing your kids along, many of them will come up afterwards and say, I wish I could have my kids back in the school district. So that's a testament to a lot of the kinds of work that the staff and the Board of Education and the community has put into this academic endeavor and extracurricular endeavors. It doesn't just happen. There's a lot of support that takes place from the community. Now, with that, we want to get you on your way for a tour. I've been rather verbose and long-winded about my introduction. Usually I take somewhere a minute or two less than this. But since we have so many of you out here today, I'm certain you have some questions that might be burning in your minds as you return to CFHS for this alumni tour and reunion. Any questions? Well, actually, I want to go back to a statement I made earlier as far as how a new high school would impact the learning situation here. I mentioned the core of the building is now 65 years old, and there have been numerous changes in the areas of laboratories and facilities of learning environments that aren't available for the students in the current structure. I would also mention, you'll see that there have been some building additions that are in fine shape and good shape, but the basic core where everything really evolves around, when you were here in 1955 or 65 or 75, it hasn't changed a lot. In fact, the students who will take you on tours, and in past years have come back and said they love to listen to the stories that are told about the core of that building, when they had a study hall here or they had a lab here or whatever the case might be. And they said, you know, it hasn't changed much at all. And so in light of what's going on and the things I mentioned earlier, such as STEM and Project Lead the Way and technological advances, cooperative learning environments where students and staff can get together in a less than typical classroom, those are the things that are really missing. Not to mention the facility, the acreage in the area that I talked about earlier. I can't overemphasize it enough because there's such a restriction for outdoor activities. Certainly there is a sports complex on West 12th Street of about 20 acres, which houses softball, and baseball, and some soccer and tennis. But yet those areas are out away from the current facility. Students still use the swimming pool at Holmes Junior High for instructional and competitive swimming, and that serves the district very well. And Peete Junior High has an instructional pool, and those decisions were made back when a pool bond issue was passed in the 70s. And really, they built at both junior highs because the high school didn't have room to expand with a pool. And yet it was also felt that instruction should occur no later than the junior high school years. And so competitive swimming could be conducted at one of the junior highs, and that's why the competitive pool was built at Holmes Junior High School. So there are a lot of things on the horizon that the staff is restricted by the limited space and kind of the restrictions of the areas that they can branch out and do some of the new things that are possible in education today. Very insecure. The building, in fact, I walked in here this morning, came in north gymnasium, lower door down by what used to be the driver's education facility that most of you remember attending in that area. And I can pretty much walk in any door. I know my way around, and a lot of people know me, but on the other hand, these days with security and now in the future, there needs to be really central receiving points and places where they can be cordoned off, and they can be really a check for security, people coming into the building unannounced and really with maybe not the proper reason to be there. So security is really a big issue and something that the district really is facing in the current structure, and it's very. I think one of and I go back to when some of you were in the class in 1975, and it was at the very beginning of technological advances that really took over from Selectric typewriters to a Commodore computers, which were very limited. We bought 3 of them for $750, what a deal that was, and they were almost a glorified calculator. But yet, it was in the business education department. It was our first attempt at having computers. We had computer science classes, interestingly enough, in the early 70s, but it was all done by cards and taken out to University of Northern Iowa to use the large computer there for the use of taking all the data that were there, and then they'd go back the next day and get the results and bring it back to the class. And now, as you all know, what can happen in really the most reasonable computer that we have has much more capacity than anything that you and I had at that time. So it was just really taking all the cards out there and then bringing it back the next day. But the technology did advance and has advanced. We all know that. We had computer labs, and we thought that was the state of the art. And then, of course, it moved on to the current Chromebooks that students have. And there are other ways, of course, which technology, and with all the things happening in STEM, with Project Lead the Way, with 3D printing, that the possibilities are just endless for students as they are going out into the world of work or furthering their education on the post-secondary level. So I can envision that things have just changed so rapidly and will in the future, and their flexibility needs to be built into a building so things can be moved around rather than just a classroom with 25 chairs and a teacher desk and say that's it, now we're set and ready to go. Learning takes place in many different ways than it did when you were students and I was an administrator in the school district. Very easily. We have a website for the Cedar Falls Community Schools Foundation. It's a great website. It has all the information you would need to know or anyone else need to know about that. And that's a good question because we actually have a class of 1963 who established, they established a fund called the Legacy of Learning. And that Legacy of Learning, they asked class members on their reunion, at that time they had the 45th reunion, to provide $45 each so that they could then set up this Legacy of Learning with the foundation, and that money could then be administered back to the school in the form of teacher professional grants, professional learning opportunities, student scholarships, or other needs that the district might have that money is not available at the current time. So they raised the ante. They established and created about $6,000, set up a fund, and that was great. Then they had 5 years later, it just seemed like it was 50 years, they said, now we'd like to have you give $50. And so classmates responded with that. Interestingly, in the first year when it was $45, we didn't have any idea what would happen, nor did the sponsors of the class, the people who were setting it up. Some people gave $45, some people gave $22.50, some people gave $745, and so the same with the class of the 5 years later. And they now have a fund in excess of $15,000, which is basically an endowed fund that we have with the foundation. We work with the people who set up the endowments, and then we ask them what they would like it to go towards, whether it's a scholarship, and they can establish the criteria. We do manage the funds, and we do carry out the wishes of the people who set up those funds. So it's a real opportunity for alums to give back to the school that they really took part of the education at that time. Thank you for your questions. We do have students right here, and one of the students will take you, and you're going to line up this way, single file. No, you're not going to single file. We're going to take you out through the musical arts facility. There's a planned route, and if you want to stop, look at a classroom or anything, do that. Ask any question to students. They have great responses. They can tell you exactly what it is, how it's going currently. And you'll wind throughout the building on the old parts of the building, the central core, and the additions. And you'll end up in front of the gymnasium where we have refreshments, and you can enjoy that time of fellowship and getting along. And if you have any questions, you can come back here. We have staff members out, former staff members in the lobby. When you sign in, they will be able to answer any questions that you might have. And I would certainly be able to glad and happy to do that. Please do contact us, look at our website, and let us know if you have any further questions or anything you'd like to know about, or you would like to help us in the future. I might say that the foundation is very proud. It's a volunteer organization of terrific community members, many former staff members, and we took pride in the fact that we now are at $1 million that have passed through since we began this foundation about 7 years ago, all through the efforts of volunteer work, and that people who also subscribe to the idea that they wanted to help us carry out the mission of providing resources to help the students and staff of the Cedar Falls Community School District.